Hey, welcome everybody. I have an idea and here's what we're going to do. In the last episode, I said I was returning this guy. It's going back. And although I'm still not satisfied with the spectral purity of this thing, what I decided to do is to hold on to it, take it to the ARRL to get tested and see what their results will be. So in the meantime, I might as well make videos, and today we're going to talk all about the battery here on the Wouxun. The Wouxun KG-Q10H. Almost called it a UV something. Anyway, here is the battery for the Wouxun KG-Q10H. But what I will tell you is this is advertised, as you can see here, as a 3000 milliamp hour or 3 amp hour battery with 22.2 watt hours, and that seems very promising. One of the things that Ham Radio Crash Course mentioned that I also noticed was putting this battery in doesn't necessarily always click correctly. You have to give it a little bit of force, and even then sometimes it doesn't feel like it fully seats. But the reason for that is very simple. This is supposed to be an IP67 rated radio, and anytime you have a connection that's loose or you have any kind of seal here or gap, water's going to ingress, and therefore your IP67 rating will no longer be valid. But the question is it 3 amp hours, 3000 milliamp hours? Let's find out. So I ran multiple tests during the battery analysis, and I had to charge the battery and discharge the battery. So I figured the best thing to do would be to first charge the battery with the cradle, which I started the test at 4:10 a.m. at 6.5 volts. And by 8:30 a.m. the test was done, taking just a little over 4 hours to charge the battery, the alleged 3 amp hour battery, with the cradle. And then I needed to discharge things. In order to discharge things, I went ahead and used this Mountain CBA or computer-based analyzer 5. Now the thing about this is it plugs in with USB, and then it also has these power pull adapters. The power pull adapters, they end up plugging in and going to the leads, however primitive, on your battery. And with that, I went ahead and I used the Mountain Radio computer-based analyzer software twice, because after this discharge, the second time I went ahead and I charged this via USB-C. And via USB-C, it took a little bit longer to charge. Starting my test at 12:43 p.m. with 6.5 volts, I was finally done charging at around 6:30 p.m. Yeah, almost 6 hours of charge time for the USB-C, and that's not unexpected to have a slower charge time for USB-C as opposed to having the cradle charger. So everything looks on par there, but how did the results turn out for the battery? Is this really a 3 amp hour, 3000 milliamp hour battery? Let's find out. Here we have our first of 2 tests that were conducted. This first test was tested at a very minimal current, that being a 0.5 amp of current. And the reason for that is I wanted to attempt to get the most out of the battery. And then in the second test, I will raise that up to an amp hour or an amp of current. And there's a couple things we see here. First of all, we see that this test runs for 352 minutes. And the other 2 things we see are amp hours and watt hours. Now, a lot of times when we talk about the capacity of a battery, that is, maybe you'll see mAh or milliamp hours, So for example, this one is spoken of for the capacity as 3000 milliamp hours, and here we see just under 3 amp hours, if you will, 2.94 amp hours. So it's pretty much right there. And all this equipment that I use, this glorious computer-based analyzer, which is a great analyzer, all of these things are not official. They're for reference only, as I've seen in some comments, which is a good way to put it. Basically what I'm telling you is there's no guarantee that my equipment is ever accurate, although I do believe that based upon prior tests, it's close enough. And so that's why I say when we have something like 2.94 amps or amp hours or 2940 milliamp hours, it's close enough for me to call it a 3 amp hour battery. Perhaps one of the things that is overlooked many times is the watt hours of a battery. And the watt hours is 22.274 on the battery today. Now, you might be asking, what is a watt hour? Basically, the energy consumption of an electrical device is measured in watt hours. Let's write that down, though, real quick. So if we have our watt hours, pardon the W, and we have our amp hours, what else is missing from there? Well, amp hours times voltage is what equals your watt hours. Okay, so how many volts you are running, or how many volts you have, times your amp hours will give you, or should give you, a close estimate of your watt hours. What we could see in the red is the 2 lithium ion cells that are 3 amps total. Now I input the information that is 3 amps, but the computer-based analyzer detects that it's a 2-cell battery. Okay, and then it says that it passed because it was 2.94 amp hours, and that's 98% efficient, or 98% of what was advertised. But again, 22.2 watt hours were advertised, and we are definitely getting 22.2 watt hours. And as I mentioned, that's when I now charged up my radio, or the battery rather, with the radio and the USB-C that's built onto the side of the radio. And it's important, actually it's on this side, it's important though, once you get the USB-C charged, that you put this cover back on properly so that you maintain your IP67 ingression or waterproof rating. So the second test, what were my results? Let's find out. At 1 amp of current, pretty close. Yeah, and you know, most of your tests are gonna run to become like the most efficient or effective results that you'll get from the battery. So as I add a 0.5 amp of current, we'll see that I go down to 21.49 watt hours and 2.895 watt or amp hours. So basically 100 milliamp difference from the advertised 3 for the capacity. But again, I think you have to recognize that I'm really pushing this thing hard at 1 amp of current for 173 minutes. But regardless, it's still a pass, and I'm content with the battery, and I think that that's really cool. So right around a 3 amp hour battery, you know, many times we see these batteries, labeled like, I keep saying hold on today. That one looks like it's, it doesn't matter. Many times though, we look at these batteries and they say some outrageous claim. Sometimes they will say 3 amp hours and they only test at like 2.4 amp hours. And the companies are trying to pull a hard one on us, or a fast one on us rather. That's not the case here. This battery, I would say, is right around 3 amp hours. And more importantly, it did test at 22.2 watt hours. I'm really impressed with that. So putting beside the fact that the purity looks horrible on this thing, and not horrible, but it's not to standard. Let me just put it that way. And that doesn't bother some people, and that's okay. The battery looks really good. And as far as they did this goes, there is a seal on here for the battery. And basically that's in order to keep these contacts dry so that if this is submerged into water, it doesn't get too wet. Now, typically when we talk batteries and we talk IP67 rated, we usually see some kind of, I'm gonna get the word wrong, I'm sorry, gasket that goes around the battery internally here, a rubber gasket. And usually that helps kind of create that seal so that water doesn't get in. But in this case, it appears that they're doing that in between a combination of the battery lip and the slide-on battery portion. And remember, this is going to be difficult to close. Even there, which I thought I put some good pressure on, actually that one did click in. Okay, so yeah, just difficult to close. Make sure you line it up and then probably use your palm. It will click into place and you'll feel the click. I don't know if you heard it though, because I got these headphones on. Regardless, that was information about the battery on the Wouxun KG-Q10H. What do you want to see with this radio next? Let me know in the comments below if you haven't. Go check out that first video. Thanks for checking out the channel. This channel's Ham Radio Dude 73.